good. Let's get going. Good morning, everybody. This is May 16th, Wednesday, 2018, Portland City Hall. We're all here for the Portland City Council AM session. Carla, please call the roll.
Fish.
Here.
Saltzman.
Here.
Udaly.
Here.
Fritz.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here. Good morning.
Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a light goes on, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations, will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping keep your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Very good. Thank you. So first up is communications.
Item 460, a request of John Hollister to address council regarding housing crisis for people of color, the color of law. He called this morning and is not able to make it.
I'm sorry to hear that. Next individual, please.
461, request of Mycelis Doyle to address council regarding how the council and city of Portland can better support Portland public schools. They are also not able to make it.
All right. Next person, please.
462, request of Lightning Super Creativity Independent Watchdog to address council to declare state of emergency pertaining to homeless children.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Creativity Watchdog. One of the issues I have is on just how many homeless children we have out through Oregon, Portland, and all different areas throughout the neighborhoods. And the reality is that I don't think we're getting the real data, the actual numbers on how serious this is. In my opinion, Governor Brown, and when you decide to come into Portland, I'd love to have a meeting with you. You're failing miserably. You're failing miserably pertaining to the homeless children. And I want to see real data, updated data, real numbers that you're getting from the Oregon Department of Education, and yet that doesn't show the real picture of what's happening. Beaverton, 1,400, Reynolds, 1,350, Portland, 1,300, Medford, 1,200. We're talking thousands and thousands of homeless children, students not getting into housing, being put into hotels, being put into shelters, young developing minds having stress and trauma put upon them because they can't go to school with their friends. And to you, Governor Brown, to not address this issue as a state of emergency, I'm asking you to step down as governor. I do not want to see you get reelected. I do not want to see you as governor. I want a governor in there that looks at this problem and says, this is a state of emergency for the children. Children into housing first, and we will come up with the money. You have failed the homeless children in Oregon, Governor Brown, and I am asking you to step down. Thank you.
Thank you. Next individual, please.
463, request of Brad Perkins to address council regarding Sullivan's Gulch Trail Cascadia High-Speed Rail.
Good morning, Mr. Perkins.
Good morning, council, and congratulations, Commissioner Fish, for last night's victory.
Thank you very much.
I look forward to your next 4 years of leadership. What I'm here to talk about mainly is the Sullivan's Gulch Trail, which in the future will be the Rose Quarter to Gorge Trail. What we're talking about here is new corridors. The high-speed rail will be a subject that I'll bring up later, but the issue I want to be concerned about right now is the trail. As you know, 15 neighborhoods in northeast and southeast Portland have already committed their support over the years. In 2012, 3 of you voted on that the resolution to continue the work on finding funding and developing this was passed by you. And since then, we've got a Bike Town program that took $2 million of our money, but there was $10 million that was presented from Nike to help make that program. We're talking about the same way, same model to do this type of trail, where we have a private-public partnership. We can form a 501c3 and get half the money for this thing, okay? Because there's the opportunity of development along this trail, affordable housing as well as market rate housing. You already see 6 projects going on right now, okay? But how do we get there? We get there by a will to do it. And we do not have that at PBOT right now. And hopefully with the command change with Leah Treat and also Mckibben at Parks, we can maybe look at another way of, like I said, funding this and setting up a priority to make this thing happen. Now, if we're going to do congestion pricing, we got to be thinking about other corridors along the I-5 and I-84. You got the North Willamette Greenway, and you got this that will eventually go all the way out to Multnomah Falls. This is the type of planning that we should be thinking about when we talk about congestion pricing in order to offer another alternative to get people to work or wherever they're going safely. Let me just emphasize that point. And this is my main topic right now. And the reason why this needs to happen now is they're trying to build or plan a bridge over I-84. Now, you can't build a bridge halfway. I learned that in architecture years ago. You can't build it halfway. So what's needed is a safe corridor under 2 major highways, that being Grand Avenue and MLK. It needs to go under and not through the intersection there on Lloyd Boulevard. It's getting set up to be major accidents. So take that $5 million that's estimated to go along that corridor and redirect it towards this under the bridges corridor instead. And I've, in that letter, have lined out how we can look at the $3 million that's already thought about using for Lloyd Boulevard and Multnomah Street to go towards this project. And one last thing I want to emphasize is that there's property, private property and city-owned property along there that, especially city-owned property, that can also be used if that property was sold to go directly towards this trail. What I'm trying to do is think private-public partnership, and that's the way we want to
Thank you, Mr. Perkins.
Privately push it through. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next individual, please.
464, request of Jackson Mckibben to address council regarding metro area issues.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Great, thank you. How are you?
Good.
Good.
This is my first time speaking here.
Welcome. Glad to have you.
I've lived in Portland since October 2016.
And I'm sorry, Jackson, could you just identify yourself for the record again?
Oh yeah, this is Jackson Mckibben.
Thanks.
So I'm so sorry.
Thanks.
So I've lived here since October 2016. I've definitely noticed a couple of issues that really stand out. I think the homeless is really out of hand, and I think that they need more opportunities to show themselves in a positive light for the people that want to make changes. I lived in my car for over a year, and I definitely started to understand how you are discriminated when you do have different sleeping arrangements from most of the population. And I've talked to a lot of them, and they say basically they don't have the opportunities in place. A lot of people don't want to hire them. They can't get clean. They can't go to work. I think two positive solutions would be to pay them to pick up the trash. Obviously, it's kind of an integrity gap to just, trust someone to go out and not raid a bunch of trash cans and lie about it. So maybe someone could watch them do it. And also start to paint over all the graffiti. I do find graffiti expressive, and it's not completely negative, but I do think as far as Portland going through a pretty heavy gentrification process, and they're trying to clean up the streets and stuff, I do think that that would be productive, and also it would clearly separate the people that want to make changes and want to be a productive member of society, and the people that do just want to take handouts. So I think that would be really good to do. I've also just noticed that how unsafe people drive out here, under the speed limits. I mean, it's literally like people don't have their 5 senses when they're behind the wheel of a car, and it's very intimidating sometimes, and it's kind of uncomfortable. I feel like you will be heavily ticketed for going 5 over the speed limit, but when someone's going 10 to 15 miles per hour under the speed limit, and when they won't let you over, when they sit in your blind spot, things like this need to be addressed. I just think that we're in such a day and age of segregation, and we just need to all kind of work together, because we're all just people trying to make money, trying to be safe, trying to come home to our families, and we just need to help each other as American people. And I think that whether we're in a suit, whether we sleep on the street, wherever we are, we're all American people, and we need to just come together and help each other. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Good message. Thank you, sir, for being here. Appreciate it. That completes communications. Have any items been pulled from the consent agenda, Carla?
I've had no request today.
Please call the roll.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The consent agenda is adopted. Next item is, well, by the time people show up and we get moving, we'll be at 9:45, so I don't think anybody will argue. Next item is a time certain item number 465. Carla, read it slowly so it takes at least another 30 seconds.
Okay. Amend fee schedules for building, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and land use services. Oh, sorry, that was the wrong one. We'll leave it. Is that it? Oh, that's the right one. Yeah, sorry. It was right.
Which one were you reading,
delaying
Carla? Were
unnecessarily.
you reading 465?
Yes, should I read it again?
Look at that. It's time. It's 9:45. Good. Commissioner Udaly. Oh, I'm sorry. I was told I was going to call on
Okay.
Commissioner Udaly.
Okay, hold on.
This is the amending of the fee
I was
schedules.
mesmerized by Carla's hypnotic reading
Stalling
of the
tactics.
title. Good
Carla,
morning,
Dan and I
everybody.
didn't actually hear the reading of the title. Could you do that again, please?
Alrighty, so BDS resets fees every year to achieve cost recovery. I am on the right item, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. The only area where fees are not currently covering costs is land use services, where we're starting to see a slowdown in the pre-development work that the land use services team does. These fees have been reviewed by the Development Review Advisory Committee. Kyle O'Brien and Ross Carone are here from BDS to talk through the details.
All righty. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Morning, Council. My name is Ross Carone. I'm with the Bureau of Development Services. I'm sitting in for Elshad Hajiv, who is our Business Operations and Finance Services Division Manager. As Commissioner Udaly already said, we're here to speak to Council about proposed fee changes for the 2018-2019 fiscal year. As I believe everyone already knows, our Bureau is 99% funded through fees associated with land use reviews, building permits, and our enforcement program. Every year, BDS presents its fee changes to Council. This year, there are minimal changes to the fee schedule, and Kyle O'Brien, our finance manager, is here to speak to the details of these proposed changes.
Thank you, Russ. I'll just start with the couple of fee increases. The first one is to our field issuance remodel program. This is a niche program based on an hourly rate, and we're proposing to increase the hourly rate by $13 an hour from $177 an hour to $190 an hour for this program. This program is currently operating below cost recovery, so this increase is meant to bring it closer to cost recovery. The second increase we have needs a little bit of background. We have the hearings officer fees, which currently sit with the auditor's office, and we're this year moving those to BDS fee schedule and then increasing them by 5%. The reason we're moving them is because we currently collect the fees and then send money to the auditor's office through IA every year, but we keep the fees themselves. So it makes more sense for us to keep them on our schedule. And finally, we have a few fees for new reviews. These new reviews are associated with forthcoming legislation, including the Central City 2035 Plan District and the Comp Plan Early Implementation Package. These are new land use reviews. The new fees are Central City Master Plan Review, Plan Development Bonus Review, Plan Development Bonus Review New or Major Amendment, Transportation Demand Management Review, Transportation Impact Analysis Campus.
Those are all new fees?
Those are all new fees associated with new reviews. We also have some minor language changes on the hearings officer schedule to bring it to mirror our land use fee schedule, and also to some of our other schedules to comply with Oregon Building Codes Division administrative rules. Finally, as part of our ordinance, we have Exhibit I, which is 7 projects and shows the cumulative impact of fees across all development bureaus on those 7 projects to allow council and the mayor to evaluate the fee changes overall across all bureaus. This is meant to make it easier to see the changes and also bring fee changes to council in a more holistic way. If you have any questions on other bureaus' fees, I would respectfully ask that you address the other bureaus when they present their fee change ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions? Commissioner
Just one question. I was intrigued by the bonus review, the new bonus review. So that would entail BDS confirming that a project complies with the various bonuses it's seeking to use. So is that right?
I will have to get back to you on exactly what services are performed under that review. I can go talk to our land use division manager and get you that information.
Okay, thanks.
Very good. Public testimony?
Yes, one person signed up. Chuck Crockett.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
My testimony against the assessment of fees and against the processes of what you guys have been doing are based on the fact that, I mean, there are no checks and balances to what you guys do. You guys kind of do whatever you want, and amending these fees in the public has no say-so. And the public of the low income and the African American community, we have no say-so, and they don't get to review any of these things or do anything about what may happen as a negative effect to what your processes will bring. So I would have to basically deny that you guys should even proceed in any way, shape, or form until you have a system set up where low income and African American communities can actually review and speak against it if they disagree with you and actually stop this process. And I know you guys aren't probably a fan of that because you're sitting there high and mighty, but I've emailed you, Ted Wheeler. I've emailed all of you, actually, to try to actually get you guys to implement this system so that people that are negatively affected and everybody from every community is actually speaking, actually has power in the decisions of what is going on with their government. And you guys aren't just allowed to run away and do whatever you want because in your own mind you may think it's good in what someone tells you, but there's no checks and balances to what you guys are doing coming from the community itself. I know you guys are elected officials, but under the circumstances you're elected, that's not even fair. The 14th Amendment right of a lot of people are being violated from the way that the system is set up. So I think you guys should halt what you're doing, go review the 14th Amendment, and really implement these systems so that it is being fair what people are receiving from their government and not just paying money and being fees assessed from different parts of the government. You guys already talked behind closed doors. You guys could have already agreed to have these fees passed through, and I know that. So I'm going to sit here and testify for the community, for the low-income and African-American community, and just everybody in general, all communities, that you guys need to halt what you're doing, and you need to set up review systems for the public to completely challenge decisions that you make, so that if they catch something that you don't catch, or if they don't agree as the public, then they can stop you, and you're just not doing whatever you want.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Mayor, could I?
Commissioner Udaly.
Yeah, I'd just like to briefly respond to that. BDS, as was mentioned, is largely funded by permit fees. We have an obligation to recover the costs of our services from developers, and this policy was reviewed by our Development Review Advisory Committee, which includes members who represent minority construction contractors and low-income housing developers, as well as neighborhoods. It's not an invitation to come back. You gave your testimony.
I really don't care. You guys have a police chief that was part of a sex trafficking case that you guys are.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Listen,
Yeah.
she has been trying to respond
Yeah.
to your, I thought you gave good testimony. She's responding, and now you're going off on another tangent.
Yeah. Anyhow, I'd like to thank the BDS finance team and the DRAC for their work on this, and we will vote on it, I guess, next week.
Not today, yes.
No,
This is the
yeah.
first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you. Could you please turn off the music? Thank you. It's disruptive. So we do not yet have, we have a time certain. Do we have anybody here from Parks and Recreation for item 473 yet?
I don't know. Are our invited guests here? The invited guests are here.
Let's see. Do we have anybody here from the Bureau of Transportation for item 474 yet? Come on up. We'll do, please read 474 next.
Authorize payment to LTK Consulting Services, Inc. for $6,348 for operator seat base modification.
Commissioner Saltzman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll turn it over to Catherine Levine of the Bureau of Transportation.
Good morning.
For your consideration.
Thank you. Is your mic on?
I just turned them on.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. So the ordinance before you today would authorize payment to a vendor that provided service to us. And in short, at a staff level, we used an incorrect procurement process. We followed goods and services when we should have been following professional, technical, and expert services. So we will correct that in the future and follow the correct path. But in order to pay the consultant for the work that was done, which is $6,348, we're bringing the ordinance to council. It's my understanding that the Chief Procurement Officer does not have authority to do this without your approval.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Colleagues, any questions? Public testimony on this particular matter? Oh, Carla's not here. One moment. Sorry, Carla. On 474, is there any public testimony?
Oh, nobody's. I'm looking at my sign-up sheet. No, nobody signed up.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Thank you for the transparent explanation. Mistakes do happen. It does seem reasonable to pay the people who have done the job. Aye.
Thank you.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Item 475, please. Second reading.
Vacate portions of Southwest Hall Street, Southwest Lincoln Street, Southwest Grant Street, and Southwest Sherman Street at Southwest NATO Parkway, subject to certain conditions and reservations.
So this is a second reading. We have already had this read. A presentation has been given. Testimony has been taken. Any further discussion? Please call the roll, Carla.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. Do we have anybody here for item 476? How about well, I don't want to go without Nick on that one. Could you read 479, please?
Ratify a letter of agreement with the District Council of Trade Unions to authorize a 4% wage increase to each step of the Water Bureau Operating Engineer 3
Colleagues,
classification.
this is going to be referred back to my office, so we'll take 479 off the agenda. And let's see, going back, we are going to take a 7-minute recess. We will reconvene at 5 minutes past 10 for the time certain. All right, we are back in session. Could you please read item 466, Carla?
Authorize a class action settlement agreement related to the installation and remediation of curb ramps in pedestrian right-of-way along city streets.
Commissioner Saltzman.
Thank you, Mayor. Before us this morning is a legal settlement that will dramatically accelerate the Portland Bureau of Transportation's efforts to come into compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. It is also a way for us to recognize our legal obligation to provide more curb ramps on our sidewalks. We have nearly 40,000 street corners in the city of Portland, and each one represents an opportunity. If built with the correct curb ramps, each corner represents a chance for our city to provide safe and accessible mobility for all Portlanders, regardless of whether they are living with a disability or not. For many years now, we have been working to provide these opportunities. Each year, the Bureau of Transportation has been building hundreds of curb ramps to ADA standards. But the fact remains that we have not been building them fast enough. Thanks to this settlement, we will double the number of curb ramps we build each year and have reached the solution without having to engage in costly and lengthy litigation. And that's good for the city, and that is good for all Portlanders, because instead of being in court, we're going to be out there on the streets building curb ramps. In a moment, we'll hear from Director Leah Treat, and after that, we will hear from Eva Hunziker of the Bureau of Transportation, who will walk us through the settlement. We also have Ken McGarr from the City Attorney's Office here to answer any questions, and Nicole Sharon, our Disability Program Coordinator with the Office of Equity and Human Rights. And she has some comments as well. We will then ask the claimants and the Civil Rights Education and Enforcement Center, otherwise known as CREEK, to address council. And after that, we can turn it over to general testimony. So I'll turn it over now to Director Treat.
Thank you, Commissioner Saltzman, and the rest of the council. So good morning. I'm glad that we're here today to hopefully approve the settlement. This is really important for many reasons, and one of them is the city's policy commitment to equity. And equity is something that I'm really passionate about. It's one of the reasons that I love working for the city. So this settlement is incredibly meaningful to me. And, you know, in the realm of transportation, equity can take on many meanings, and one of them is access. And that's what we're talking about today, is access to our system for all users. We launched a Vision Zero initiative in 2015 to eliminate traffic fatalities on our roads. And as part of this, we have focused on investments and programs in communities that have been historically underserved in the city. And thanks to those commitments and investments, Portlanders are safer to our investments. And we've also committed to traffic enforcement without racial profiling. This is a significant piece of equity work that we're doing at the Bureau as well. I think we are one of the few Vision Zero cities in the country that has made this pledge, if not the only one. And internally, we're building up our equity initiatives. In 2016, we hired an equity and inclusion manager. And last year, we completed our 5-year racial equity plan, and we've been working on its implementation. We have an active equity committee that is helping to lead our internal conversations about achieving transportation equity across our many projects and programs. And thanks to these initiatives, we have made significant progress in integrating equity into everything that we do. But there's an area where we haven't done as well. We need to be building more curb ramps, and we need to be doing it in a more timely fashion. And when you compare a curb ramp to something like a bridge or a streetcar, it seems like a humble piece of infrastructure, but it isn't. Make no mistake, curb ramps are critical for people with disabilities, and that's why we're here today. We're taking a major step forward in providing people with disabilities with the mobility and connection that they need and deserve, and it's our obligation to provide that. In reaching the settlement with Creek, the city has pledged to build and upgrade 18,000 curb ramps over the next 12 years. That comes to about 1,500 ramps a year, and it's double the number that we have been building and upgrading in the past. I believe this is a profound victory for our disability community and for all of Portland. Thanks to this settlement, we're going to be a more mobile, more connected, and more equitable city for all Portlanders. Now I'll turn it over to Eva Hunsinger, who's going to walk you through a slide deck with the proposed settlement.
Thank you, Director Treat. Good morning, Commissioners and Mayor Wheeler.
Morning.
I'm Eva Hunsinger, and I'm lucky to serve as a supervising engineer with the Portland Bureau of Transportation. I'm happy to present this settlement for your consideration. As a matter of fact, I'm truly honored. The settlement was the work of many hands, and with me are some of our key partners. Jeremy Patton, our PBOT Business Services Group Manager, Deputy City Attorney Ken McGarr, Nicole Sharon from the Office of Equity and Human Rights. Also here are Randy Stenquist from RISC, Scott Modi and Linda Law from the Attorney's Office, all of which have provided extraordinary service to get us to this point. To begin, I'd like to provide you with a brief overview of the anatomy of a curb ramp. Ensuring that curb ramps meet the needs of all users of our sidewalks and streets, we must consider 4 separate elements. These elements are summed up with the acronym SWAP. S refers to the slope of the ramp, which is a maximum 8.33%, and that's a strict requirement. Where it absolutely came from, we're not sure, but we think it goes back to the days of it was 1 inch per 12, 8.33%. W is for the wings on either side of the ramp, which has a maximum of 10%. A is to make sure that the ramp is accessible, meaning that it's free from obstructions, so people in wheelchairs or crutches can actually get up and around the ramp to make their turns. And then finally, in Portland, we use P for perpendicular. So when a wheelchair user comes down the ramp to the street, they don't tip because they're coming to the street in a perpendicular fashion. In addition to meeting these core requirements, an ADA compliant ramp must also have the yellow bumps at the bottom of the ramp. The official name for these bumps is called the truncated domes, and they provide an important signal to people with visual impairments that they are entering or leaving a traveled way. Here is one of our inspection forms, so that you can see how these elements actually work and translate onto a project. We have approximately 27,000 corners with curb ramps in Portland. Many of these ramps are in need of repair. In addition, there are approximately 11,000 other curb ramps approximately 11,000 other corners without ramps. To address this situation, we have had a sustained program of curb ramp installations. For the last few years, we have been installing ramps like these at an average rate of 750 ramps per year. And this is quite an accomplishment, but unfortunately, as Tim Fox, the executive director of the Civil Rights Education and Enforcement Center called CREEK, and Linda Dardarian, who specializes in disability rights, have brought to our attention that the city is falling short of what the ADA requires of us. In 1991, the Americans with Disabilities Act became effective. It requires that curb cuts be built so that people with mobility devices can get access to and from the street onto the sidewalks. Without curb ramps, people are forced to travel in the street, which poses significant safety risks. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 1 in 8 people have or have had serious difficulty walking or lifting their feet to clear a step or a curb. Curb ramps remove that barrier. A curbed corner brings us and people so that they can more easily reach the sidewalk. To address the shortfall in our efforts, we entered into a settlement negotiation with CREEK starting in the year 2016. The settlement before you puts into practice our commitment to bringing an accessible Portland. It also demonstrates that when we find a common goal in a higher purpose, Parties that would otherwise be adversarial can indeed collaborate to find a positive, productive way to address the issues as partners without resorting to expensive litigation. We found a way to put more dollars towards building an accessible city and providing a plan that makes it more manageable for the city in lieu of it being mandated by a court order. Because we had been constructing ramps over the years and were transparent, and since Portland does not dispute that we aim to be an accessible city for all, Creek was agreeable to help us as a partner to make this happen in a more manageable way. They were open to working with us to find a way that would allow the city to get compliant over time. This settlement agreement calls for 1,500 curb ramp builds or upgrades per year for the next 12 years for a total of 18,000 curb ramp improvements. It calls for an inventory of all ramps within 2 years and a transition plan that describes the plan for addressing, upgrading, or installing the remaining ramps required to make the city fully accessible. The city will provide the Creek team with an annual report summarizing the number of locations of accessible curb ramps installed or upgraded, along with access to our GIS system for their own tracking. Curb ramp installations and upgrades will be prioritized for public services, schools, parks, hospitals, and bus stops through the view of an equity lens. The Portland Bureau of Transportation, the Bureau of Environmental Services, the Bureau of Development Services, the Portland Water Bureau, and Parks are all working together to upgrade curb ramps when a utility or pavement work is performed. And our pavement restoration standards reflect that when a curb corner is touched, it must be brought to standard with a curb ramp. The Bureau of Technology Services has made our curb ramps by request system now accessible by moving the link to the intake form to our primary city webpage. Our maintenance operations, paving operations, now construct 450 ramps annually and are highly proficient in both laying them out and constructing and finishing them nearly year-round. Electronic inspection reports are well underway, and our ADA curb ramp program is one of the first in the country to be certified by the Federal Highway Administration. And our construction specifications require that accessible routes be provided in construction areas. This ordinance is to approve the settlement agreement and any documents necessary to implement the agreement. The City Budget Office, PBOT, and Chief Financial Officer Jennifer Cooperman have, in tandem and together, identified a tentative plan to fulfill the financial terms of the agreement pursuant to the city's budget approval process. Those of us who do not currently have disabilities are fortunate, and it's easy to take our own mobility for granted. As you will hear from our guests today, this is not something that everyone enjoys. We need to do everything we can to remove barriers to safe and equitable access for our fellow Portlanders and those who live with disabilities. We're doing that with this settlement today. We're living up to our ideals of equity and accessibility today. I'm so proud of our city, and I am honored to present this settlement for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole, did you want to?
So I think it's important that we support the settlement. I think one of the pieces that have been mentioned and needs to be highlighted is that we as a city adopted the Americans with Disability Act in 1993. And so when something like this comes up, we really don't look at what we're doing now, but what have we done from 93 till now? And so we are grossly out of compliance with curb cuts. And so this is something we have to do. It's something we should have been doing. It's unfortunate that it had to come out of a settlement, but it's happening, which is great. And I think that as we see equity moving forward in the city, it is important, as Leah said, that we need to include disability equity in the racial equity conversation. Not just because disability equity is important, but there are people of color with disabilities. And so I think this is a great step forward for us, and it's something that I hope continues to keep on our radar, the things that we need to be doing to make Portland more inclusive for everyone.
Thank you.
So the panel's happy to take any questions, or we can invite up our next panel. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all. So now I'd like to invite the claimants and the Civil Rights Education and Enforcement Center attorney to come to the table. And if you could each just give us your name, that we can do that.
I'm Tessa Ronig.
I'm Tim Fox with the Civil Rights Education and Enforcement Center.
Good morning. Thank you for being here.
And I'm Linda Dardarian.
Good morning, Linda.
Thank you. So good morning, council members. I think I'll lead off. I'm going to be very short, and Linda and everyone else will have a few words to say after that. I was kind of thinking about what I wanted to say here today, and I was injured and started using a wheelchair as a result of a sports injury when I was 21 years old. So I've had the experience of not being disabled, and then I've had 3 decades of experience using a wheelchair. And it occurred to me that it might not be obvious to someone who doesn't use a wheelchair the benefits of existing and compliant curb ramps. So I thought I would speak to that. And there's 2 different categories. There's corners that don't have any curb ramps at all. And those obviously are problematic because if you're driving along and you're trying to get to the sidewalk on the other side of the street and you encounter a corner with no curb ramp, you have to either go some other route or usually just drive in the street until you can find a spot to get up onto the sidewalk. It's also difficult when there are existing curb ramps that are non-compliant. So for example, there are some curb ramps that are kind of steep, and where they meet the gutter or the street, that can have the reverse slope. And the consequence of that is that as you're going down the steep curb ramp and then encountering the opposite slope, you can pitch forward. All of that has real life consequences. One thing is that it causes me, particularly in a new city of which I'm not very aware, to want to have somebody with me. So that if I'm going down a ramp that I think is okay but might not be, I've got somebody who can hold my upper body from pitching forward at the bottom of the ramp. So it impacts my independence. It also can be difficult in a variety of settings in which, as a person with a disability, you're trying to integrate with other members of the community. So for example, when I was a summer associate many, many years ago in Los Angeles, we all went out and we were walking several blocks to a restaurant, I think it was, and we came across a corner that didn't have a curb ramp. And so I separated off and went around the block while everybody else went on their way. And it's just those kinds of experiences that when you're already in the process of trying hard to kind of feel like you're part of an integrated group, you encounter something like that and it just emphasizes the differences rather than the likenesses. And this settlement really goes a long ways towards addressing those issues in that it will result in new ramps being put in at corners where there are no ramps, and it will result in ramps that exist but are not compliant being brought into compliance. And that just means a tremendous amount to me as a person with a disability who's kind of grown to fall in love with the city. I love Portland, and I have not had the opportunity to come here until we've had these discussions, and it's just a wonderful place. And so I urge approval of this agreement because it will make this city accessible to all persons regardless of disability. And I want to say one other thing that Linda's going to touch on as well. We've worked with a lot of cities about curb ramp issues over the years, and the folks in Portland have just been amazing. We've really enjoyed getting to know the folks, Eva and everyone else on her team, and I just wanted to personally express my thanks for that.
Thank you. Thank you for those kind words.
Thanks, Tim. And thank you for having us here today to to discuss the settlement and for you to approve the settlement. We all have a lot to be very proud of today. Under this agreement, the City of Portland will make substantial improvements to the accessibility of its pedestrian right-of-way for residents and visitors with mobility disabilities by installing and upgrading about 18,000 curb ramps over the next 12 years, double the rate of installations and upgrades of recent years. This really is a very remarkable commitment that Portland is making, and this commitment was achieved in a remarkable way by remarkable people. How was this achieved? This is a settlement, but there was no lawsuit. Instead, it started with a letter that described how the lack of accessible curb ramps in the pedestrian right-of-way prevents individuals with mobility disabilities from independently and fully participating in the sidewalk system that Portland makes available to the general public. But the letter also acknowledged that the people who make up the government of the City of Portland are well-intentioned, and that Portland has a commitment to disability equity and wanted to be a leader in ensuring that Portland is accessible to residents and visitors with disabilities. So the letter invited Portland to work together with the community of people with mobility disabilities and us as their representatives to address this urgent civil rights and safety issue, and to achieve Portland's goal of embracing the letter and spirit of the Americans with Disabilities Act and other civil rights laws. In other words, instead of throwing a punch to begin a big fight with a lawsuit, we offered Portland an outstretched hand to sit down together and work on problem solving. And to the city's great credit, the city saw this as an opportunity and responded positively to the invitation with a message that, yes, we can do better. And we very much appreciated that. So instead of engaging in costly and expensive and protracted litigation, we worked together with representatives from the city attorney's office and PBOT to problem solve. And that involved frank discussions, open sharing of information, meetings with us and our clients who are here today to talk about the issues with the existing pedestrian right-of-way, corners that are problematic, how to prioritize what needs to be fixed most urgently, identifying funding sources to help Portland achieve the goal of a fully accessible pedestrian right-of-way, and developing a schedule for making the pedestrian right-of-way compliant and accessible on a much more rapid schedule than was being pursued before, but in a way that the city can realize that is workable for the city and for its residents and visitors with disabilities. And this was all done very collaboratively without an adversarial process, which often results in tension and great expense and ruins relationships. Instead, this process resolved the matter much more quickly than litigation, much more efficiently, and at the fraction of the cost of litigation. But best of all, relationships were forged and built and strengthened throughout this process. Working together, we built a relationship of trust and open communication between the city representatives and the community's representatives that will continue for many years. And this was due to the remarkable people involved. Two of them you will hear from soon, Tess Ronig and Alan Hines, and then also Carol Zoom, who is a resident of Portland, but also lives part-time in Maui, and that's where she happens to be right now, so she couldn't join us today. There are 3 Portland residents who took it upon themselves to represent the interests of people with mobility disabilities to ensure that all can safely and independently move throughout the city's pedestrian right-of-way. And we also had remarkable champions and partners in problem solving. Eva Huntsinger from PBOT, who you've heard from, Kent McGarr, Scott Modi, and Linda Law from the City Attorney's Office, Randy Stenquist from Risk Management, and also initially David Galat, who is also here today. They welcomed the opportunity to do the right thing for Portland and its residents and visitors with mobility disabilities, to do so efficiently and effectively for everyone concerned, and in a way that works for Portland, in a way that makes Portland a community partner and a leader for the future. This really is a remarkable achievement. one that we are extremely proud of, and you should be proud of as well. And you should show your pride by approving the ordinance, approving the settlement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Again, my name is Tess Ronig. I just wanted to share a personal story about my experience with non-compliant curb ramps and hopefully emphasize the importance of this settlement. When I first moved to Portland, I was downtown with some friends, and it was just off Burnside, I think on 9th, and I went down this very steep curb ramp, but didn't see that it had an edge on it, so it wasn't flush with the street. And the front of my wheelchair caught on that, and I was tipped into the street, out of my chair. And it was very, very fortunate that I had people with me, and that there wasn't traffic at the time, because I got a few scrapes, but I could have been much more seriously hurt. So it's just very, I'm grateful that this settlement is happening, because it will prevent other people from having to experience that. And then when I lived in Southeast Portland, there were lots of non-compliant curb ramps and just non-existent curb ramps in my neighborhood, and it made it really, really hard for me to navigate my neighborhood. It made it difficult to get to know my neighbors because I just couldn't move freely around my neighborhood. So this settlement is a blessing for all residents with disabilities.
Thank you. We appreciate your being here.
All times I run a program that supports people with disabilities to live independently in our community. This settlement means a lot to me and our community in general. There are certain neighborhoods in the city where it is nearly impossible for a person in a mobility device to navigate the neighborhood. So I'm hopeful that with the settlement we will make all of our neighborhoods in Portland accessible to people with mobility needs. So thank you for considering this, and I hope you will approve the settlement.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you being here.
Thank you all for being here. That completes the invited testimony.
Very good. Public testimony, Carla, do we have people signed up today?
Yes, we have one more. Joe Walsh.
Mr. Walsh.
Good morning. My name is Joe Walsh, and I represent Individuals for Justice. This program and settlement is something you should all be very proud of. in the future, I will most likely be in a wheelchair. So obviously, I have a bias when it comes to this. My radius of movement is slowly being taken away from me. So you should be proud of this. The program itself, I said with a great smile on my face, but I was also haunted because I'm an activist. Why in 2018 are we where we are? Why do we have so much work to do? I always get that feeling when these things come up. You know, why where were we in 91, 90, when the ADA was being passed and everybody that had a brain knew that a wheelchair cannot go off a curb unless you build a ramp? I mean, we all knew that. Where were we? Why didn't we do it? And why are we now catching up in such a drastic way? I'm just pleading with you, when you deal with ADA and you're dealing with it today and it's on your mind, think of ways that you can really help. The sidewalks also are in really bad shape. I know that because I pull my friend along with me, and often I'll hit a rise in the sidewalk, it'll pull right out of my hand. So I'm aware of that. The sidewalks are bad. Your building, you should figure out a way about getting people in the back. I know that's going to be expensive because you have no ramp there. You have to figure out a way to get past those steps. You have some really bright, talented people either working for you or volunteering, and you just heard from some of them. They could figure that out. If you drop people out front, which happens to me a lot, I have to get out on a traffic side because there's no way that you can park and get me out on the non-traffic side. But in the back, it's perfect, except when you walk in the door. Then you got a problem. But you can figure that out. Mr. Mayor, you got 3 more years to figure it out. What I'm suggesting to you, can't believe I used all my time. What I'm suggesting to you is don't let this be just another one, another issue. This should be something you look in the mirror in the morning and say, how can I help? What can we do today? This is a big one. And I'm praising you, which I don't do very often. But all 5 of you, with no exceptions, I'm praising you for this. So thank you for it, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm getting older, by the way.
Mayor, I have a couple of questions for staff.
Yes, please, Commissioner Fish.
If we could have the team come back for a second. So thank you for the presentation, and I look forward to supporting the ordinance before us, and it includes authorizing the commissioner in charge to enter into a consent decree which has certain provisions, including some ongoing financial obligations, which seem reasonable. The primary financial obligation that we're incurring today that's clear to me is in the consent decree, which obligates us to cover the attorney fees for the plaintiff's lawyers for a period of time. And there's a cap that seems to be set forth, so we can calculate that obligation. The impact statement, though, says we're still about $52 million short of figuring out how to pay for this, and that's in addition to monies which apparently have been identified through Bill Portland and other general fund sources. And I don't know that I've seen any document that lays all that out, Mayor, and because we are today not being asked to actually formalize how we're going to pay for it, we're entering into the resolution of the dispute. I think it's very important, though, that the council have a complete understanding of all the conversations, the various options. I want to be very clear, this is a huge priority for me that we do this. Someone other than Commissioner Salzman is going to be in charge of PBOT starting at some point and have the duty to find the resources to implement this. But when I read that, you know, that when I read that $61 million has already been identified, including general fund and Build Portland resources, that's news to me. And then when I hear we have a $52 million gap that has not been discussed by the council, and then it concludes by saying all this will be addressed as part of the mayor's budget proposal, which it clearly has not. I want to make sure that we're all clear about our obligations, the options before us, and how to pay for this. I'm not saying we have a bad habit of signing onto agreements and then not funding them, but I do think this is going to require some very tough choices going forward on budget time, and I think it's very important that the council have all that information. So if there's a document that identifies everything PBOT has identified as potential funding sources, and then the balance that is due and options for that, I would ask for a copy of that. And I know the mayor has an ask in his, has a part of his budget includes, I think, $500,000 or $1 million set aside. But these are much bigger numbers, and I know today is not the day we're going to figure out how to pay for this, but I would like to know what the roadmap is and what our options are, because these are very big numbers. Any comment to that?
Good morning, Council and Mayor. This is Jeremy Patton with PBOT. So we did work on a memo with the Chief Financial Officer and CBO and ourselves kind of to try and find a right split kind of between the general fund and PBOT resources to help pay for this. Hopefully that memo kind of reached your office. It came out kind of in the end of April, but I can kind of describe really quickly some of the bigger level components of that memo and what's been included in the mayor's proposed budget right now, which is kind of up for vote. So starting with the PBOT component, it's about, so we have the $113 million problem. And what we've done as PBOT is identified about $60 million of internal PBOT resources over the next 12 years to try and address that. About $60 million.
When you say internal PBOT resources, does that mean non-general fund? Non-general
fund resources, correct. So it's a mix of, we have.
I've got the budget office shaking their head, and that's not what it says in the impact statement. So I want to get a clarification on that, because that's not what the impact statement says. Impact statement says that 61 million includes general fund and Build Portland resources. So that would clearly be general fund resources.
Commissioner, may I make a suggestion? I share your concerns about the financing plan, and I was going to say in my closing statement that I don't agree with the financing plan. I think it would be helpful to approve the settlements because we have to.
Right.
And then have a further discussion, perhaps even a work session about how to pay for it.
I'm all for that. I just, because it's before us and this document says that there's been these conversations and potential splits, I want to make sure that we have all the information we need, because a future council will be responsible for making sure we honor the commitment we're making today. And it looks like there's a lot of, it was news to me, by the way, Mayor, that there are Build Portland resources. That's a pot that's going to come under a lot of strain. But to the extent there's general fund resources, obviously we can't commit future councils to that, but I want to make sure that we honor whatever the framework is. Otherwise, we could end up being in disputes over implementation of this very quickly, and I don't want that to happen. So you said there's a memo that issued sometime in April?
Yes, there's a memo issued in April that kind of outlines the larger pots of money that would help fill that gap.
Okay. Well, I'm going to take Commissioner Fritz's advice that we will separate these two things, but just speaking for me, and now that it's clear that the city is stuck with me for another 4.5 years, I want to make sure what it is that we're committing to so I can do my part at budget time to make sure we're allocating the money. And right now, I guess I'm just not so clear about how we're going to fund this, so I hope we have a robust discussion about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
Very good, thank you. And we've completed public testimony.
Yes.
Please call the roll.
Fish?
Well, first, Dan, thank you for bringing this forward, and thank you to our professional team, and thank you to the plaintiffs' lawyers and the plaintiffs who joined us today. it's actually very rare that we have the benefit of having plaintiffs' lawyers and plaintiffs coming and testifying, and I think it's very refreshing. And I particularly appreciated the comment that was made that it simply took a letter to engage the city in problem solving, not years of litigation, which is expensive and time consuming and often doesn't move the ball. And so I credit everyone involved that they reacted to this in a positive and proactive way rather than a defensive way. You know, the truth is that curb cuts are just one of the sort of canaries in the tunnel, but there's so many other examples of facilities and public spaces and other things in our community that are not ADA compliant. And that's one of the reasons, one of the ways the ADA was constructed, the Americans with Disabilities Act, is it has a mechanism for putting people on notice that they have to fix it, and it's not designed to be punitive, it's designed to be corrective. And so here's an example of where a watchdog group has said, we're falling short, and the city has stepped up and said, we're going to do better, and I compliment everybody for the spirit in which they entered into this. We want our city to be welcoming and accessible to people of all ages and abilities. We want to be the leading city of our size in that way. And today I think we're taking another step forward. I'm pleased to vote aye.
Saltzman?
I have a lot of people to thank. I want to, first of all, thank the claimants for what you've done today, for bringing this before us, but also for sharing your experiences with our sidewalks and our curb ramps. I think that firsthand perspective is something that really helps me appreciate that we need to do better. And I think I want to thank Creek for sending us that letter rather than a tort claim, and engaging in a conversation that's leading to this settlement today, which is a major obligation, but it's also a major responsibility we have to our residents. I wanted to thank Director Treat for her commitment to equity and her receptiveness to the idea of trying to work this out in an amicable manner. Eva Hunsiger of Portland Bureau of Transportation, who really led the discussions with our city attorney office on this settlement, and I think she has the benefit of being both not only a professional engineer, but she's also an attorney. So those perspectives really, I think, helped us to get to where we are today. Wanted to thank all the people in our city attorney's office, Ken McGarr, Scott Modi, Linda Law, for their work on this, Nicole Sharon as well, and I think I'm not leaving anybody out. Am I leaving anybody? Randy Stinquist, yes, Randy Stinquist from RISC, always an important voice, and Jeremy Patton too. So thank you all for the settlement. This is the right thing to do. Aye.
Udaly?
Well, thank you to PBOT, city attorneys, and Commissioner Saltzman. Before I launch into my broader comments, I want to say how pleased I am to hear about how you are thoughtfully prioritizing this work, because it is a daunting task, and there is greater need in some areas more than others. So I'm going to be checking out your curb ramps by request and maybe putting in a few in my neighborhood. So disability is a natural part of the human experience. There have always been people with disabilities. There always will be. And as our life expectancies increase, the number of people with disabilities, especially mobility challenges, will increase as well. I want to note how unusual it is to see multiple people in chambers using mobility devices. I also want to note that having 4 or 5 people in the room is actually more reflective of our population, with 1 in 8 people who have or have had experienced mobility challenges. And the fact that this is a rare event highlights the challenges that we're here to talk about today. Sorry, I skipped ahead of my notes. And that challenge is navigating a world in a city that was not built with wheels in mind, at least not that are not attached to a combustible engine. So many people with disabilities do not view their disabilities as negative or unfortunate. It's the disabling environment, both physical and attitudinal barriers, that is unfortunate. And nearly 3 decades after the ADA passed, it's inexcusable. I want to thank the advocates who are here today for their grace and their patience and their understanding. I don't think that we deserve it as a city, but it is greatly appreciated nevertheless. Thank you. As noted, the City of Portland is woefully behind on ADA compliance. I hope that this lawsuit will inspire us to be more proactive and do the right thing without the threat of a lawsuit in the future. Our bureaus have had 25 years to plan, budget, and implement their ADA compliance plans. I know we're not voting on a funding plan today, but I want to echo Commissioner Fish's concerns about how these improvements will be funded. Their ADA compliance is neither sudden or unanticipated, and I look forward to that conversation. Aye.
Fritz.
Well, thank you, everybody who's been involved. I vividly remember about 20 years ago when I was a registered nurse working at Oregon Health and Sciences University, taking a person using a wheelchair outside for some fresh air and encountering a curb ramp that wasn't flush with the pavement and having to take a run at it to get over it. It was only a little, like ½ an inch to an inch lip, and yet it was very difficult, even with the non-electric wheelchairs, to just push the person up it. And ever since then, I've noticed when I'm walking around where curb cuts are obviously not going to be very helpful for people who are using mobility devices. And so I'm very pleased that we've gotten into this settlement today. Thank you to the claimants and their attorneys for their approach. I really appreciated hearing about the letter and the outreach, and then I appreciated hearing that our attorneys and staff responded with welcoming and with talking together. It made me very happy that of all the equity initiatives nationwide, I believe ours may still be the only one that has a secondary focus, apart from racial equity, on disabilities. And so I want to credit Joe Vanderveer and Nyla McCarthy, who were on the Portland Commission on Disabilities at the time when we established the Office of Equity and Human Rights, who insisted that disability had to be part of what the city does. And I think that's one of the best decisions that I've been a part of on the council. And that was spurred by Nicole Sharon and Amalia Alaconda-Morris, establishing the Commission on Disability, which I got to oversee, and one of the first things I got to do on council in 2009. And Danielle Brooks and Dora Perry were also a big part of that. So it was good to hear that there was a recognition that the city has been trying. I also hear the recognition that we haven't been trying hard enough and that we need to get to do more. And so this is a historic settlement. I do want to discuss the financing of it. That's for a further conversation that we shouldn't detract from today. So thank you, Leah Treat. I know that you're going to be moving on. This is a legacy that will be appreciated citywide for a very long time. And thank you for your leadership. Eva Huntsinger, you've done an amazing job on this entire project, and the explanation today was extremely clear. City attorneys, the Civil Rights Education and Enforcement Centre, all the work that's been done on the age-friendly cities, Commissioner Fish and your leadership for that, and of course Commissioner Saltzman for your guiding of this process, Mayor Wheeler for being willing to say, yes, we're going to have to figure out how to pay for this, and we will. So thank you so much. This is a good settlement for everyone, and I'm happy to move it forward. Aye.
Wheeler.
I'd also like to thank the claimants, and I'd like to thank you both for the substance of your approach. You're right, and you always were right. And I'd like to thank you for the tenor and the style of your approach, which was to approach the city of Portland in a collaborative manner and see if we could work together to find a solution that will bring us both into compliance with the law and provide us the opportunity for a fiscally achievable and a fiscally responsible approach to funding the solution. So thank you, and I agree with all the positive things that my colleagues have said, and I'm glad Commissioner Fritz just added to the mix that while the disability community is front and center in this conversation, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we have declared that we are going to be an age-friendly city. And with an aging population, that means these kinds of access and mobility and accommodation issues need to be more highly prioritized than they've been. I wouldn't be me if I didn't slightly rain on the parade. I want to remind us what we heard today. What we are doing is we are working to come into compliance with federal law. This has been federal law for decades. And a former city council back in 1993 made it very clear that we were going to adhere to federal law. And it is only through the largesse and the generosity and the approach to partnership through the claimants that we were able to get to that point. But Commissioner Fish raised a question that's been really interesting to me since I got here however many months ago. The question of how do we pay for things, number one, and can we bind future councils, number two. When the City Council in 1993 said that they were going to uphold federal law, ADA, they bound this council. And the reality is there aren't a whole lot of great financing options out there. There are financing options, and it's going to take a ton of hard work for us to be able to realize the potential of those financing options. And we're here today to recommit to working to find whatever that right package is. And I certainly want to work with my colleagues to find a package that we collectively agree is the right package. But the bottom line is that for 25 years, we have been ignoring our requirements here writ large. I understand that the city has been committed and individuals have been committed to this and policies have demonstrated that. But in terms of actually complying with the letter and the spirit of ADA, we didn't do it. And therefore, every year we did not do it, our legal and financial risk has grown. And I think part of my job coming in as the mayor is to direct all of our city bureaus to clearly identify our legal and financial risk so that this city council, because we are committed to it, so that this city council can actually put plans on the table to address our legal and financial risk. I do not want to be in a position where 25 years from now, some mayor sits in this chair and says, holy cow, what did you do to me? Why did you leave this exposure on the table for us? That is an intergenerational transfer of responsibility and resources. And it's not going to continue to happen, not under my watch. So I want to thank the partners who are here today. This is great work. It moves us in the right direction. And I'm just grateful that we are lucky enough to have such fabulous partners in this. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you all for being here. Next item, 467.
Authorize a loan in an amount not to exceed $500,000 to Portland Homeless Family Solutions to purchase real property at 6102 and 6220 Southeast 92nd Avenue for use as a homeless shelter.
Colleagues, last year the City Council allocated $1.25 million for new shelters, and we've requested the Portland Housing Bureau to direct $500,000 to this project. The item in front of us today is to authorize $500,000 in funding to Portland Homeless Family Solutions to acquire a new shelter, augmenting shelter capacity here in the city of Portland. This project will add to the available temporary housing options for families experiencing homelessness, serving homeless families at their most vulnerable. With us today is, of course, Shannon Callahan, who's the Portland Housing Bureau interim director. We have Brandy Tuck, who's the executive director of Portland Homeless Family Solutions. And I'm sorry, could you remind me?
Sally Erickson with the Joint Office of Homeless Services.
Sally, I'm sorry, I'm just having one of those moments. Thank you for being here too, Sally. We sure appreciate it. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Shannon Callahan from the Portland Housing Bureau. I'm pleased to be here this morning to support the joint efforts of the city, county, and community to find more safe spaces for families without permanent housing. The Portland Housing Bureau will be contributing funds from the Lentz Urban Renewal Area to close the gap needed to purchase this building. Portland Homeless Family Solutions has done extensive private fundraising, and we are pleased to be able to join them with the final needed funds for this purchase. As we all know, of course, shelter is not the solution to homelessness. Housing is. And we are pleased that we've been able to create 458 new units of affordable housing in Lentz and have an additional 259 in the pipeline. We will also ensure that if this property is not used as a shelter or for affordable housing, we will be able to secure the land for affordable housing in the future. We think this is a wise investment, helping kids and families stay safe while we all work together to move them into permanent housing. Brandy?
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and
Morning.
City Council members. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Brandy Tuck, and I have been the Executive Director of Portland Homeless Family Solutions for the last 11 years. Our mission is to empower homeless families with children to get back into housing and stay there long term. Our roots go back to 1994 when a group of committed volunteers created the Goose Hollow Family Shelter, which houses 8 homeless families with children every night of the year. Families come at 6 p.m. and they leave by 7:30 the next morning. Over the years, PHFS has expanded the Goose Hollow Family Shelter to include robust social services that help over 200 families every year. Today, we operate several programs. We operate a Housing First program that helps families experiencing homelessness move back into housing. Last year, we helped 185 families, or 653 moms, dads, and kids, move back into housing. In our homeless prevention program, families with 72-hour eviction notices get help keeping their housing and preventing homelessness before it even starts. And we operate shelter programs with the Goose Hollow Family Shelter for 8 families with children every night of the year, the Family Winter Shelter at Congregation Beth Israel for 75 moms, dads, and kids during the winter months, and the 13 Salmon Family Center, which is the day center for both of the night programs. Over the last year, we served 700 individuals. 61% of those people were children. Half of those children were under the age of 5. Everyone in Portland can see that we are experiencing a homeless crisis and a housing state of emergency. But what everyone doesn't know is how many people who experience homelessness are children and their parents. Last school year, there were 4,317 students that experienced homelessness in Multnomah County alone. 4,300 students experienced homelessness in 1 year. That number doesn't count their little brothers and sisters. We know at PHFS half of our kids are under 5, so presumably there's another 4,000 little kids, plus all their parents. The wait list to get into the family system is a year long. Our shelters are full and over capacity. Kids don't have a place to eat, do their homework, sleep, or just relax. If a family became homeless tonight in Multnomah County, there is literally nowhere that they could go to find safe shelter. We need to do better. PHFS has a plan to do better. It's called our Families First campaign, and that's why we're here today. We have an opportunity to buy a 16,000 square foot building and 8 adjacent apartments in the southeast Lentz neighborhood of Portland. The campus would allow us to provide shelter for 26 families with children at a time, about 75 to 90 moms, dads, and kids. Each family would have their own private room with shared bathrooms, living spaces, and a big kitchen with 3 meals a day. The new site would provide 24 hours of continuous service for families. No longer will families need to wake up and be out the door by 7:30 in the morning. The Lentz campus is also closer to where families actually live. Our programs are all downtown, and families come downtown just because we're here. Families we work with don't live downtown. Sometimes they've never even been downtown before, maybe once to go to the courthouse. Our families live out east. Their kids go to Centennial, Reynolds, Park Rose, and David Douglas school districts, and they want our services to be closer to where their lives are centered. There are 8 units of 2-bedroom apartments. We plan to run those apartments as shelter, 2 families per apartment, 1 in each bedroom, and there's room for growth. There's a large back parking lot that we would plan to develop into affordable housing in the future. We would also invite other social service agencies to come provide wraparound services like mental health, domestic violence advocacy, childcare, and employment. PHFS has a track record of success over the last 10 years to show that our approach to services works. We have a strong fundraising program that allows us to stretch our public dollars really far and has allowed us to build a sustainable infrastructure that is sophisticated enough to support growth. Our staff are experts in the field and are rigorously trained in evidence-based practices. We pay a living wage, and because of those 2 things, we have an 85% staff retention rate. Today, Portland Homeless Family Solutions asks you to vote in favor of a $500,000 equity gap contribution to help PHFS acquire this great family shelter campus in the Lentz neighborhood. Thanks so much, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Brandy. Questions? Commissioner Saltzman.
Well, I was just curious what that building was that you showed us.
Great question. Yeah, it used to be a Russian church. It kind of looks like a castle, but it has, for the last 5 years, it's been run as an inpatient men's addiction recovery program by a national nonprofit called Teen Challenge International. They have bought a new program, a new building in Estacada, and have moved their services over to Estacada for the sale of the building.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Fritz.
Brandy, you said that there's room to grow on this campus. So we looked at that slide. Is the zoning on that property, particularly in the back where there appears to be a parking lot, flexible enough to allow you to do some additional housing there?
It's CM2, so yeah, it's very flexible, and we can do residential housing there.
Terrific, thank you.
Very good. Public testimony, Carla?
Yes, we have 3 people signed up.
Very good.
Please come on up. Joe Walsh, Ellen Vanderslice, and Mary Sipe.
Come on up, and thank you. Good morning. Would you like to start, please?
Good morning. Sure. My name is Ellen Vanderslice. I reside in Northwest Portland. I'm also very recently, as of less than 3 weeks, a property owner in the Lentz Neighborhood Association, where my husband and I have bought a small vacant lot, hoping to develop some naturally affordable housing. And for the last little bit more than a year and a half, I've had the honor of serving on the board of directors of Portland Homeless Family Solutions. And I'm here today to urge approval of this ordinance and make the case that this is a sound public investment. I'm convinced that this new family center will be a success. This is the right organization at the right time in the right place. PHFS is the right organization to take family shelter and housing to a new level. In my decades as an advocate and as a bureaucrat, I've had to deal with a lot of different nonprofits, and as you know, I founded some of them. But PHFS stands out for having its actions based on its values. It lives out its mission. It is thoughtful and strategic. It is really good at fundraising. And it's very agile in responding appropriately to opportunity. Brandy put up the slide about the moonshot. I was present at the board retreat where we came up with the moonshot idea. That was just a little over a year ago, last April in 2017. And at that time, the board hadn't, a moonshot, it was way out there. And here we are today, so close to buying this actual site, and I'm just so excited about this. The Lentz property is ideal for expanding PHFS's services, and Brandy went over the housing, the programs, the shelter. I have been a volunteer at PHFS for more than a decade. I started out with my husband volunteering overnight as hosts, and being present when families have to get out at 7:30 in the morning, it's just traumatic. And what we want to provide for families who are already experiencing the trauma of homelessness is trauma-informed care is something where people don't have additional trauma forced on them, and having to get up at 6:30 in the morning, 7 days a week, and be out the door, up the back stairs, and not be seen by anybody at 7:30 in the morning is really just not very conducive to a pleasant day. So I think this is a great opportunity. It's amazing how quickly it's come together. And finally, you have the opportunity to leverage this investment. They're getting $1.5 million bank loan. They've raised nearly $1.5 million privately, and you're asked to put in the extra $500,000. Please do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Great testimony. Thank you.
Go ahead, Joe. Okay, I'll jump in.
Thank you, Mayor.
I too want to urge you to approve this loan. I can't tell you how excited I was to see this on the agenda this morning, especially in lieu of the work that I'm now doing with the Oregon Harbor of Hope and the Navigation Center. I was really excited to hear about the potential of the 458 affordable units and the focus on families. I find it just so interesting how timely, after Lightning spoke this morning about his concern about homeless families. And, you know, it just speaks to what the private sector can do and how quickly these things can move along as well. And I want to say kudos to the Portland Homeless Family Solutions for what they're doing. We at Oregon Harbor of Hope may be reaching out to you as one of the agencies that we look to help in our endeavors. And I also want to kind of throw it a little shout out as you're designing affordable housing to also be thinking in terms of how you kind of find a way to put those people who are homeless and unhoused at the top of the waiting list, in the front line, before people who are housed move into those buildings, who are just moving from one home to another home. Right now, the affordable housing projects around the city are tightening up their eligibility criteria. They want people to have 2 years of rental history. We all know that people currently living on the streets are not going to qualify under those kinds of tight restrictions. They don't have 2 years of rental history. They are denying people that have delinquent debt over $1,000. They're denying people that have felony convictions and not even doing any kind of special review or anything like that. So as you're moving forward with this, think in terms of how can this affordable housing reach out to the people who are unhoused right now and put them at the front of the line. And again, I urge you to approve this loan.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. This is, we're speaking in favor of this. It's the $500,000 loan that will eventually be a gift down the line someplace. However, we hate emergency shelters. They are necessary. We have to have them. However, many people tell us that they don't want to go to emergency shelters because they fear for their safety. They don't want to go to emergency shelters because they're going to lose their animals. They don't want to go to emergency shelters because they can't spend the time with their loved one. There are all kinds of regulations we have that are really negative and counterproductive in emergency shelters. And that's what they should be, emergencies. They should not exist for 40 years. If they exist for a long period of time, haven't we failed? Emergency shelters is somebody is cold, they're in the street, we get them inside. That's the concept. But we keep them going. And we create these institutions. And those institutions have two criteria. One is to serve the clients, which are the people on the street. The other one is to survive. And if they need to survive, the way in our culture is to expand. And that's where we get into trouble all the time. So when you think of an emergency shelter, you should say emergency shelter should be disbanded after a couple of years. The other thing is every emergency shelter should have private spaces for every human being we put in there. So there's some sense of safety, not bunk beds, not mats on the floor. They have their private little area. It would not be that difficult to do. Some 2x4s and some plywood, they would be safe. And that's what they're asking. They want to be safe. We hear it over and over again. They're afraid to lose their stuff. You know, I go nuts with the sweeps because they lose their stuff. They lose their stuff in emergency shelters also. The other thing is, human beings have a tendency to be very authoritarian when it comes to when they have power. And we've shown that in a number of studies. So these things are necessary. We got to get rid of them.
Sure. Thank you.
And they got to be in their own little place.
Thank you. Last testimony.
My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Creativity Watchdog. Again, my biggest concern is when they're dealing with the homeless children, children need to be first to get into permanent housing. Children need to be first to get into any beds in a shelter. Children need to be first, and there's no negotiating on this. If you don't allow that to happen, in my opinion, and I'll address this Commissioner Fritz, who is smiling, would be considered child abuse. And from federal law, if you don't think children should be in housing first, I don't think you should sit up here. Now, issue number 2 on this, I approve of the money going to this organization. They do good work. They're focusing in the right area. But I think they would also agree the data pertaining to the homeless children and the students that are homeless and the kids that are sleeping in cars 2 blocks from their school with their parents to go to school because they don't have housing or any other opportunity, do they lose their kids when the police officer drives up and sees 2 kids in the back seat and they're 2 blocks from the school trying to take their kids to the school? That is something that we need more data on, how the police respond to this situation, and understand we have to have systems in place to protect the children first. We do not need to allow this trauma to happen to them at a young age, developing minds, trying to go to school, trying to do things with their friends. We need to have systems in place. We need to talk about it. We need to see real numbers. We need to see real solutions, such as this group is doing. But as you can see by the numbers that were presented, it is just a small part of the big problem out there that I feel hasn't been addressed. We need to get that Metro bond pushed through. We need to figure out how we can use money from the city bonds toward these type of groups, toward their redevelopment of more permanent type housing on their back lot. We need to work with these groups and come forward with the funding. But understand, there are no excuses for not having children first into housing. And if anybody in this room ever wants to challenge me on that issue, I'm more than glad to challenge you, and I will assure you I have the ability to make sure you don't get reelected. And trust me, talk to Mr. Cogan from Multnomah County and ask me if I can do that. I will assure you, you won't get reelected Children first, no negotiating, get them into permanent housing, no more excuses. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it, all three of you. Thank you. Call the roll.
Fish.
Well, I'm pleased to support this. It is a 60-year loan that is forgivable, and I assume that the decision was made to do that versus a grant for strategic reasons, but it's a good investment. The Portland Homeless Family Solutions is one of our best partners, and Brandy Tuck, a recipient of the Skidmore Prize, is one of the brightest lights in our work. Aye.
Saltzman.
Well, this is a very exciting and necessary project, and I appreciate Portland Homeless Family Solutions for undertaking this effort, and I think it's very appropriate for us as a city to put in an amount that will help push this over the finish line and get this shelter open as soon as possible. Aye.
You Daly.
Very excited about this and happy to support it, and would just like to say that regardless of whether we're in a housing emergency and regardless of the state of our housing market, we will always need emergency shelter. So I vote aye.
Fritz.
Well, thank you, especially to Portland Homeless Family Solutions for the presentation about your work, which addresses everything that we heard in testimony. Thank you, Ellen Vanderslice, for volunteering and for taking the time to come in to support this resolution. And thanks to the Housing Bureau for partnering in this, and also the Portland Development Commission, Prosper Portland and the Lentz Urban Renewal District. Appreciate also the support of the community. Aye.
Wheeler.
So this is a great day, and I appreciate Portland Homeless Family Solutions. Brandy, it's always a pleasure to see you and to appreciate, again, the great work that you and your organization are doing. And Shannon Callahan and the Housing Bureau, thank you. There's a couple of points I'd like to make. First of all, people ask me, as mayor, what hills are you willing to die on? This is one of them. And you heard the passion from some of the people who are testifying. I share that passion. I would not be sitting in this chair but for the fact that for many years I was an overnight volunteer shelter host at the Goose Hollow Family Shelter, now Portland Homeless Family Solutions. And my impression was the impression that was shared from the dais here a few minutes ago, that 7:30, you're up, you're out. Anybody here who has small kids knows what that's really like. And that's in good circumstances. Now imagine that you are living in a homeless situation, your kids are under a lot of stress, the parents are under a lot of stress, you're in an unfamiliar environment, there's a lot of people in close proximity, and you have to do all of those things. They are often difficult as a parent in the best of circumstances. This actually improves the quality of the shelter. I do hope that there will be a day where we do not need shelter in our community. Today is not that day. We have over 4,000 students in Multnomah County who are sleeping either in shelters or in cars or on the street. There are probably many, many others who are doubled up in homes and apartments with other people. I'm proud of the work Portland Homeless Family Solutions does, because they're really good once somebody is in the shelter at getting them out of the shelter and getting them into housing. And collectively, through a Home for Everyone last year, we moved 5,000 people from shelter into housing. And that doesn't even count the 6,000 people who receive preventative homeless services to prevent them from falling into homelessness in the first place. So the key is quality shelter, services in the shelter to move people out of the shelter and into permanent housing, and therefore, by the way, freeing up capacity in the shelter for other people who might be in a real pinch, who need that support. We are going to vote on our budget later today, or at least the proposed piece of this. There's step after step in this budget process. But I believe this council has reached a consensus around $3 million additional dollars in the budget to go specifically towards the transition from shelter into housing. And with regard to youth in particular, I just want to remind everybody that this council went down to the legislature in the short session with Multnomah County, with the support of the governor, and we were able to secure $5 million for the youth family shelter services that we provide here. And that was one of the few instances during that short session where dollars were actually allocated for a purpose like this. So I feel like there is that consensus in that push and that passion to address homelessness youth in our community. I'm very happy to vote aye. This is one of the easiest votes I'm ever going to take. Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you, Brandy. So, thank you. Colleagues, we have a 4/5 agenda item. Could you please read it, Carla?
Proclaim May 13 through 19 to be Taiwanese American Heritage Week.
Colleagues, we have Jeff Chang, who is going to come forward and talk about contributions by Taiwanese Americans. We have an invited panel of testimony. Jeff will close this out, and then I will read the proclamation, and if people would like, I think it would be fun to get a photograph at the end with the proclamation. Welcome for being here, sir. Thank you.
Mayor Wheeler and the City Council, my name is Jeffrey Chen, and I'm a 1.5 Gen Taiwanese American who has called Portland home for the last 18 years. I'm both very humbled and proud to be here to have Taiwanese Americans being celebrated by the City Council and also to proclaim the Taiwanese American Heritage Week. I am a senior advisor to the Taiwanese Association of Greater Portland, and professionally, I'm a director of demand and supply management at Nike. It's only fitting I would like to share a couple stories about the contributions made by Taiwanese Americans in modern America. So the first story is YouTube, which is an application and a technology platform that I think everybody has on their cell phone. It fundamentally changed how we humans interact, communicate, learn, conduct marketing, and doing campaigning. It shapes how we as a society talk to each other. Now, while everybody has that technology on their fingertips, not a lot of people know that the company was co-founded by Stephen Chang, who is Taiwanese American. Another story would be Dr. David Howe. Again, like Stephen, not a household name, but Dr. Howe is probably the most renowned HIV and AIDS research scientist in the world. He came to the United States at the age of 12 from Taiwan and has earned 12 honorary doctoral degrees. His treatment technique, which is called the combination antiretroviral therapy, has cured and helped countless patients around the world. So a couple quick stories that I thought would be important to share as we kick off the celebration to acknowledge the contributions for Taiwanese Americans.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Annie Shao, and I am also 1.5 generation Taiwanese American. My family moved to Portland in 1996, and the first few years of our move here, our family experienced some cultural isolation, and I also felt how challenging it was to adjust to a new environment. My mother, who is a social butterfly in Taiwan, could no longer easily talk to just anyone that she meets and ask questions. And without the internet back then, it was also challenging to find community space easily, like how we do nowadays. But eventually, somehow she was able to find the Taiwanese communities and the Taiwanese organizations. So we started to build our roots here in Portland. And so with that experience, I understood personally how important it is to foster community space so that people from all over the world can find support and community and to celebrate their cultures and their traditions living in a new space as new Portlanders. And because of that importance, I have dedicated my life, my professional life and my volunteer life, fostering and building community. I serve as the chapter president of the Formosan Association for Public Affairs, and I am also the advisor for the Taiwanese Association for Greater Portland and on the national board of the Taiwanese Association. So that's just a little bit about myself, and I also want to introduce a couple of members of our community who took time off from work to also be here today, and thank you all for celebrating with us. And their contributions may not be as glamorous as Dr. Ho or Stephen Chen, but they are making positive contributions to our Portland every single day. And we live, work, form families, pay taxes, and partner with everyone in this room to make our city a better city. We are Taiwanese innovators, medical professionals, city workers, engineers, and we're Portlanders. Here are Cherry Chi and Dr. Easton Lee to introduce themselves.
Thank you.
Hi, Mayor and Commissioner. I'm so glad to be here. This is my first time to be in the city of Portland. I'm glad to be here as Taiwanese American Heritage Week proclamation reading. I came to Portland in '91 as an immigrant. I'm very thankful and be grateful to be settled in Portland and receive education in Portland from the beginning and able to finish college, same as my brother. So I graduated from University of Portland. My brother graduated from Oregon State University, and later we were able to find a job settled in Portland. So I'm currently working at OHSU as a nurse, and my brother working in the city of Portland in Peabody. So even though we immigrated to Portland, my parents always teach us not forgetting our homeland, Taiwan. Always ask us to get involved with our local communities. So there are three communities I involve a lot. Is Portland Taiwan Lutheran Church and Taiwanese Association of Greater Portland and the FAPA. So my church has been helping assist the early immigration for Taiwanese community to settle in Portland. And TAGP also hosts multiple events in Portland to promote Taiwan and also get involved in local events like Rose Festival and Dragon Boat races, and also provide a chance for local community to get together and bonding. And FAPA helped me to, actually it's a Ross School organization, the headquarters based in DC and with local chapter here, helped me to get involved with US and Taiwan relations. I felt welcome in Portland, and also I found out city of Portland is the sister city of Kaohsiung in Taiwan. That's where I was born. That's where my mom's hometown. So I'm very glad I'll be settled in Portland and call Portland as a hometown. U.S. and Taiwan share the same background of human rights, freedom, and democracy. I hope this relationship continue to grow, and because Taiwan needs the U.S. as a strong support, as Taiwan facing the challenge in international organizations like WHO, and the United Nations. So I'm glad to be here, and thanks for recognizing Taiwanese American Heritage Week.
Thank you for being here.
Mayor and the city commissioners, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. My name is Easton Lee. I came to United States from Taiwan in 1995 to seek the higher education. I was a student at the University of Wisconsin Madison with the material science PhD program. And after graduation in the 2000, I relocated to the Portland metropolitan area for work. And at that time, I still remember one of my professors told to me, "Hi, you are going to Portland. It is the silicon forest. So it's such a very beautiful place." So today, this is the first time I come here. I also noticed we have the forest on the ceiling, on the hall. Yeah. So we have the very famous Columbia Gorge and also Forest Park nearby. So the environment is definitely better than the desert-like the Silicon Valley in California. WeberTech is the company I work since 2000, and we have create around 10,000 employees and making the mobile computer and medical and automotive chips. This company is owned and invested by the Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturing company. It's also called the TSMC. So the company is making for the customer design to real product. So you might not know, like this iPhone 10, the chip inside, the device inside, a lot of chips is made from my company, TSMC. Yeah, like A11, the microprocessors. And in this Silicon Forest region, there are also a lot of great high-tech companies, such as Intel, Tektronix, Microchip, and eBay or Amazon. So the region has a very strong relationship with Taiwan. Hundreds of the Taiwanese Americans, I think similar as my background, we relocate and work in here. We start our family, our career, our social network here. We live here, shop here, and also doing the volunteer work here, such as attend the Taiwanese Association of Great Poland. We have the outreach for the community. And I think finally, thanks for this community to offer us with the open environment and also treat us with equality. We feel like at home, and we are Taiwanese American. We will try to make a sweet home here. Thank you, Mayor and the City Commissioner.
Thank you.
Mayor, I have
Commissioner.
2 questions for Annie. Could you explain what you meant by 1.5 immigrant?
Absolutely. So I was born in Taiwan, and I grew up here. I came here as a 10-year-old, so I went through the Portland public school system. I went to Buckman, Fernwood, and Grant High School. So 1.5 meaning that first generation is the immigrant generation, and 0.5 is, 2 is if you're born here. So I'm kind of in between because I came here at a young age.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And where do you work now, and where did you work before?
I work at Portland Parks and Recreation now as the community engagement coordinator, and so my goals every single day is to connect immigrant refugees and just underserved populations in Portland to connect to our parks, our community centers, and also be a part of the planning process for opening new parks and construction of new parks. And before Portland Parks and Recreation, I worked at IRCO, Immigrant Refugee Community Organization, doing a lot of community leadership capacity building, and also doing a lot of advocacy, so empowering community members, again, to be connected to local government like City Hall, Oregon State Legislature, Multnomah County budget processes, so that we, as a vibrant community that's growing, can see more diverse communities here at these types of spaces.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Rox.
Very good.
I just want to say quickly here that as we're sitting here celebrating the Taiwanese American Heritage Week, it is critical to understand that Taiwanese American innovation is American innovation. Taiwanese American heritage is a part of American heritage, and Taiwanese American history is part of American history. It's more important than ever, especially under the current White House administration, to cherish and celebrate diversity and inclusion. Celebrating diversity and inclusion is not a celebration of division, but rather a celebration of true American legacy. So again, we're very honored and humbled to be sitting here as Taiwanese Americans, and I want to thank the mayor and the city council for taking the time to proclaim the week.
Very good. Thank you, and we appreciate your testimony. It's now my honor to be able to read a proclamation on behalf of the Portland City Council. Whereas our city of Portland has been continually renewed and enriched by communities of diverse backgrounds who make their journey from near and far to build a home here. And whereas there are more than 500,000 Taiwanese Americans in the United States, and in Portland it's the 3rd fastest growing Asian American population. And whereas Taiwanese Americans have made enormous contributions to the diversity and prosperity of American society, preserving the core values of liberty, democracy, and human rights. And whereas Taiwanese Americans have been consistent and significant contributors to the advancement of tech industries, creative industries, and others. And whereas Taiwanese Americans can be proud of their roots and of their vital role in the continued growth of our nation and our city. And whereas the year 2018 also marks the 30th anniversary of the Portland Kaohsiung Sister City Association, demonstrating a long friendship between Portland and Kaohsiung, Taiwan. And whereas during this special week, Taiwanese Americans embrace their multicultural heritage and celebrate with all of Portland in the spirit of community that binds us together as one city. Now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim May 13th through May 19th, 2018 to be Taiwanese American Heritage Week in Portland and encourage all residents to observe this week. Thank you. We'll suspend the rules. Colleagues? Commissioner Udaley?
Just like to thank you for being here and thank you for the contributions, both cultural and economic and innovative, to our community. And personally thank Steve Chen for bringing us all cat videos. I think we can agree. Sorry. I was hoping that wouldn't go flat. Definitely has raised the quality of life and happiness of all Americans.
Very good. Would you mind if we took a photo right up here?
Sure.
Thank you. It's actually easier. Yeah, we can get more people. Yes. Hello. Welcome. Please. Please, welcome. Thank you for being here.
All right.
We get people in the middle to hold this. That is the proclamation. Pretty good.
All right. Ready? 1, 2, 3. This way. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I have another camera. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's good seeing you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Material science, that's the hard one. That's the hard side. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Thank you. All right, next item, 473, please.
Authorize the transfer of density from Cully Park Community Garden, located at 5810 Northeast 72nd Avenue, to Sabin Community Development Corporation for the construction of needed housing units on adjacent property.
Commissioner Fritz.
Colleagues, I'm extremely excited to present this exciting, technical, and wonky way of providing affordable housing, and combines all of my passions of housing, parks, and planning. So I'm very excited about this. As the most recent Portland Parks and Recreation Commissioner, I was asked to donate development rights on Portland Parks and Recreation's Cully Community Garden to Sabin Community Development Corporation so that they can build more affordable housing units on their adjacent lot. This will help build housing to help more families and bring down the overall cost of the development. And Christina Nieves on my staff will explain the technicalities of how this works and what we're doing.
Thank you, Commissioner and Mayors. Mayor, my name is Christina Nieves, Office of Commissioner Fritz for the record. As Commissioner Fritz said, this action would transfer development rights from Cully Community Garden to Sabin Community Development for affordable housing units. Carla, could you please pull up the map? Thank you. Great. As you can see, Sabin is located just south of the community garden. Essentially, this ordinance provides the ability to transfer two more dwelling units to the Sabin development to increase the affordable housing in that area.
And just to interject, all of the brown part we are rezoning to open space as well, because that's Thomas Cully Park. So to orient folks, this is in the Cully neighborhood, and Killingsworth is the main cross street along here. 72nd, I believe, is the residential street. Thank you, Christina.
And this is time sensitive because the zoning, as you were saying, of the community garden is scheduled to change effective this month. I will now hand it off to our community partners, Lily Brown from Sabin Community Development and Cameron Harrington from Living Cully.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. And we'd like to thank Commissioner Fritz and her staff, Christina, and also Pooja Bhatt for their responsiveness to this opportunity. So I work for Living Cully, which is a community development coalition based in the Cully neighborhood, and I wanted to tell you how we found out about this opportunity in the first place. Last summer, I got a phone call from a realtor who said that his client was selling a property adjacent to the new Cully Park that Verde, one of the Living Cully partners, is currently building on 72nd Avenue. And is there any way that we could find a way to buy it for an affordable housing project before we put it on the market? They reached out to us because the wife of the realtor had heard a story on OPB radio about Living Cully's advocacy for tenant rights in the Cully neighborhood. And so from there, we started knocking on every door of every affordable housing provider in CDC. And we were thrilled when Luli and her colleagues at Sabin CDC stepped up and said, yes, we'd like to figure out a way to add affordable homes right here adjacent to the park. So these homes that are going to be developed, their backyard is going to be a 25-acre public park. Their side yard is going to be the community garden. So it's going to be an incredible spot for families to make their homes. When we started looking more into this property initially, I think even before we reached out to Sabin, we realized that the Parks Bureau had the community garden right next door that had several units of residential density attached to it because it was still an R3 property up until the time that the comp plan changes next week, I think. And so we thought, well, if we could get some of that density transferred next door, we could make affordable housing opportunities available for even more families than would otherwise be allowed on this land. So that was really our motivation for making the connection with Commissioner Fritz and the Parks Bureau. In addition to creating more opportunities, the ability to add density specifically for affordable housing projects makes it more likely for those projects to pencil out, because a CDC like Sabin can spread the land acquisition cost across more units. And so being able to do that specifically for an affordable housing project and not allowing that ability for a market rate developer makes nonprofit CDC affordable housing development more feasible and makes it easier for them to compete on the open market. So we really hope that this will be a precedent, a replicable model where the city can look at other properties owned by all of its bureaus that have unused residential density, even on properties that are never going to be used for housing, like a park's community garden. And really, I think an inventory could be done of what other instances where this same dynamic exists, where that density could be made available for nonprofit housing developers in order to create more opportunity, especially in a place adjacent to an incredible new amenity, where not only do we want low-income families to have access to housing at that location, but we know that the development of this park is going to raise property values and increase displacement pressures in the vicinity. So being able to add affordable homes right next door to the park now is a win-win for everyone. So thank you very much, Commissioner Fritz, for helping us make this happen.
Good morning. I'm Lily Brown. I am the housing director at Sabin CDC, and we would like to thank you, the commission, and the Portland Housing Bureau for your vigorous efforts to preserve and enhance Portland's affordable housing. In particular, this morning, we'd like to thank Commissioner Fritz and her staff for shepherding the zoning density transfer through the planning process. And what I would like to share with you are some details about Sabin and the populations that we serve. Established in 1993, Sabin CDC has worked to provide stable, affordable housing and community programs to thousands of families who would otherwise have been displaced by the forces of gentrification in Northeast Portland. Currently, our resident demographics resemble what Northeast Portland looked like in 1990. So our population is approximately 70% African American, and most of whom have lived in the neighborhood for over 20 years. Sabin CDC also established Portland's first land trust and limited equity lease purchase programs and developed 115 units of rental housing that allows low-income families and individuals to stay in their neighborhoods. It is incumbent upon Sabin as a small community-based organization to create unique partnerships and approaches to the development of affordable housing. When Living Cully approached Sabin with the idea of purchasing the property and increasing its potential density, we welcomed the opportunity as a chance to further our mission and provide much-needed affordable home ownership opportunities in the Cully neighborhood. Also, we allowing for a 9-unit housing development as opposed to 7 units of housing will ensure that this project is feasible and sustainable, and we look forward to its fruition. Thank you again for your consideration and support of affordable housing.
Thank you.
And are you still planning to do the family-sized single-family homes?
That's actually the point of limiting it to 9 units as opposed to 10, because that will allow us to do 3-bedroom units, which are in huge demand, but have very little opportunity at this point in time, in part because folks can't get the developments like that to pencil.
Yeah, it's really, really exciting. Thank you.
I have a question, Mayor.
Please, Commissioner Udall.
Thank you. Why couldn't this property be upzoned to R1 and you could double the number of units on it? Any thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, it would have had to, upzoning it to R1 is an expensive process. It costs approximately $30,000.
Not while we're in the middle of the comp plan. But
if we had known about this property about 1.5 years ago, and we could have submitted it with the new comp plan, we would have been all over it. Yes, I know. Sigh.
Yeah, deep sigh. Thank you.
Well, it's a relatively small parcel, though.
It's
almost 17,000 square feet.
About 16.5, 17,000 square feet. And it also, because of the restrictions of the street width, I would be very leery about doubling the density there. I think that given the neighborhood, it just, as a small community development organization, we want to be good partners. We want to be good neighbors, and that's part of our mission.
And they want to do single family, so as Louis just said, we could have transferred another unit to get 10 units, but really 9 is what fits to the kind of development that they are planning to do that will be family friendly.
Very good. Is there any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Saltzman?
Well, this is great. Thank you, Commissioner Fritz and the Parks Bureau and Sabin CDC for being so innovative. Aye.
Udall?
Aye.
Fritz?
Thanks, Lily Brown, Sabin Community Development Corporation, Cameron Harrington and Living Cully, and just thank you to Christina Nieves and Pooja Bhatt on my staff, and Brett Horner in the Portland Planning Bureau, in the Portland Parks and Recreation, Linda Law, the City Attorney's Office, Commissioner Udall's staff in Development Services, who are also being very helpful in figuring this out. I just want to take a pause here. This is going to change things throughout the city. This one request, this opportunistic looking at how can we increase density next to a park when we're changing the zoning anyway? How can we make sure that we don't waste those units? That led to our whole concept of, we could do this downtown as well. So in the comprehensive plan process, the Central City Plan, we have said that development transfer can happen from open space in the future. We have said that in the central city. So that's going to open up hundreds of units of housing, which the city can decide how it is allocated, and which will make inclusionary housing and a lot of other affordable housing feasible, just like this. We're also, Cameron, since you mentioned it, let's get it in before the comprehensive plan changes. We're going to do another zoning code change later this year, saying that for all the properties that were previously residentially zoned and are now going to be open spaced in the central city, outside of the central city, that those units don't just disappear. So we'll be able to do that so that we can do this again in other locations. So thank you for your innovative thinking. It is going to, I think, make a huge difference for affordable housing throughout our city. Aye.
Wheeler.
So I am unabashedly a huge fan of this. Thank you, Commissioner Fritz, to you and your team and the other bureaus who worked so hard, and to all of you for your efforts. This is taking error and turning it into housing for people who desperately need it. I think it is nothing short of brilliant. Thank you. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next up, let's see here, what is next? Let's say 476 is next, please.
Shay Flaherty, Benton, Paul Delsman, Helen Holly Hunter, and Lauren Golden Jones to the Development Review Advisory Committee for terms to expire May 8, 2021.
Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. The Development Review Advisory Committee, fondly known as DRAC, was established in June 2001 as the city's primary advisory body regarding development review. The DRAC seeks to foster a timely, predictable, and accountable development review process and advocates for the consistent and fair application of regulations. The DRAC's 17 members represent groups with interests in development and development review processes. DRAC members are appointed by the City Council to 1 3-year term with the possibility of serving a second 3-year term. 4 individuals have been nominated to fill vacant positions on the DRAC as previous members who've completed their terms and/or stepped down. These 4 nominees bring significant experience in the development industry and familiarity with Portland's development review processes. Appointing these 4 individuals will bring the DRAC closer to full strength and allow it to continue its work on behalf of Portland. These 4 new appointments are Shay Flaherty Bettine, who's been nominated for the small business position, Paul Delsman, who's been nominated for the large construction contractors position, Helen Holly Huntley has been nominated for the frequent development review customers position, and Lauren Golden Jones has been nominated for the large developers position. I don't believe any of them are in the room today, but we have someone from BDS or...
Yeah. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Mark Fetters. I'm a Senior Management Analyst with the Bureau of Development Services, and I provide staff support to the Development Review Advisory Committee. And I want to thank Commissioner Udaley for the summary of these 4 appointments. I would note with these 4 appointments, there would still be 2 vacant positions remaining on the DRAC, one representing citywide neighborhood interests, the other representing minority construction contractors and development professionals. And we are actively seeking applications and reviewing applications for those 2 positions. So hopefully we will be back soon with recommended candidates for those positions as well.
Very good. Commissioner Fritz?
How would somebody step up to volunteer for those 2 positions? How would they go about applying?
They would contact me, actually, or they can go through the Office of Neighborhood Involvement as well. On the ONI website, there is information there. The city's boards and applications form is available there. They can submit that to ONI or to me at BDS.
And they could presumably call 823-4000 and ask for that information.
I'm sorry?
They could call 823-4000 and volunteer and they would be put in touch with you, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You.
Very good. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adopt the report.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Saltzman, a second from Commissioner Udaley. Please call the roll.
Well, thanks, Mark, for your work, and thanks to the new members of the Development Review Advisory Committee. They're very important. Aye.
Udaley.
Thank you, Shay, Paul, Helen, and Lauren, wherever you are. I look forward to working with you all. Aye.
Fritz.
Thank you for staffing the committee, and thank you, Commissioner Udaly. These are great appointments. The Development Review Advisory Committee is set up to be a balanced group with development interests and neighbourhood interests, so it's particularly important to have somebody who's representing citywide neighbourhood associations and also the minority contractors. So I do hope if folks are watching this and think that might be interesting, it's a very interesting committee and very important in advising how development services raises money, spends its money, and just various policy issues about development services. I'm very happy to support it. Aye.
Wheeler.
These are great appointees. I mean, if you read through their bios and the statements they provided, these are very, very strong appointees. And I'm always gratified that people with this level of skills and frankly, people who are so busy are willing to step forward and serve with us. So I'm grateful to them, and I vote aye. The appointments are approved. Thank you. Next item is also an appointment, item number 477.
Appoint Vivian Satterfield to the Home Forward Board of Commissioners.
Colleagues, today I have the privilege of appointing a community member to the Home Forward Board of Commissions. Vivian Satterfield, currently who is the Deputy Executive Director at Opal Environmental Justice of Oregon. She's had years of experience with mission-based work, creating affordable housing opportunities, economic development, and community building. She believes a home is the most important place. It's where we all start and where we all end our days. Having safe, decent, and affordable housing is obviously an essential foundation for any individual to actualize their full potential in our community. And so we are lucky today to have Vivian Satterfield, who is and we have Michael here, the Executive Director of Home Forward. Michael Bonacore is also here. Michael, why don't you come up and be acknowledged? And if you could just briefly, Vivian, first of all, we're so grateful for you stepping forward. I appreciate it very much. Could you just tell us a little bit about your work in affordable housing and economic development and what you hope to accomplish being part of this important committee?
This is such an exciting day for me, so thank you so much, and thank you to Home Forward and the current Board of Commissioners for considering me and bringing me on board as the newest commissioner. I was in reflection of this last night as I was at the Planning and Sustainability Commission offering testimony on the residential infill project. I arrived here in Portland 10 years ago and got my start actually in affordable housing, working with Nick Sovey and the crew at Rose CDC in Outer Southeast. So affordable housing was a critical issue for low-income residents and communities of color 10 years ago. And clearly from this morning's agenda, items in front of you is also a critical issue today as well. So I've been grounded in community since that time. Now, of course, continuing my work at the intersection of transportation and housing at Opal Environmental Justice, Oregon. And so I'm just so excited to be bringing that perspective and adding to the great capacity that's at Home Forward. I believe in the leadership and the work of Home Forward, and of course in the mission that everyone does deserve a safe, affordable place to call home here.
Thanks, Vivian. Michael, I don't know if you have anything to add, but you're a smart guy. You always have something important to say.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners. My name is Michael Bonacore. I'm the Executive Director of Home Forward. I would love to just offer the thought that it is my belief that housing authorities should be standing shoulder to shoulder with community advocacy groups around the issues of affordable housing and social and racial justice and all of the issues that impact folks both who receive our housing assistance and those who need it. And unfortunately, that dynamic is not common between housing authorities and the advocacy community. Often that is adversarial to the extent that I can ever influence any of my colleagues across the country, that we share a commitment to the same population and should be working side by side. I will make that effort. And, I think that is important both in terms of organizational relationships, but also in the very fabric of the organization, in our staff and in our governing body. And, commissioners who have background and experience in community organizing and racial and social justice in other justice movements are as critical to, I think, well-rounded, effective governance as, backgrounds in development and real estate finance. I feel very fortunate to have a well-rounded, passionate board who's really committed to our mission. I've had the pleasure of knowing and admiring Vivian's work for years in the community. She's had some opportunity already to engage with our board and with our staff, and I can tell you that all of us are thrilled to welcome her aboard. So thank you for considering her nomination.
Thank you, both colleagues. Any further conversation? So this got put on as a resolution, and I'm not sure how that happened. That's my fault. So I will ask if there's any.
It's required to be.
It is required to be. Very good. Okay, good. We're doing what we're supposed to. Any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
Very good. Call the roll.
Saltzman?
Well, I want to thank Mayor's office and Home Forward for recruiting Vivian to serve on the Home Forward board. I think she is a very qualified candidate. Not only does she possess a deep substantive knowledge of housing, everything that's housing and land use, but she has a great demeanor. I don't know how to say it, but you're very effective in your ability to, I think, to talk to people on all sides of an issue and to find solutions, that find common ground often as well. So I'm sure Home Forward will be well served by your skills and abilities. So thank you for serving. Aye.
Udaley?
Well, I could just reiterate what Commissioner Saltzman just said. I'll just thank you for your willingness to serve, and thank you, Michael, for your commitment to bringing more focus on racial and social justice. And I have to say, although the challenge ahead of us is daunting and the climate is surreal that we are functioning in right now, I honestly feel more hopeful now than I did a couple years ago about our ability to kind of rise to this occasion and meet the challenges. Aye.
Fritz?
Well, thank you for your willingness to add yet another responsibility to all the things that you do in our community, and your depth of experience and your knowledge of the intersection of transportation, equity, land use planning, housing is going to be invaluable, and I really appreciate you're willing to spend the time necessary to pull all those things together in partnership with the commissioners on the board. Thank you. Aye.
Wheeler?
Vivian, thank you for being willing to serve on the Board of Commissioners. I obviously am a huge fan of yours, and I think you're a fabulous addition to the Home Forward Board of Commissioners. So thank you for your willingness to serve. I'm sure at some point, somewhere, you've told somebody no when it comes to serving the community, but I have not seen it yet. You have just unbounded energy, and you are extremely knowledgeable about these issues, and I think you bring an excellent perspective to the table. And so I look forward to many years of incredible service on your part. And as the mayor of the city, I'm very grateful in your willingness to serve. Michael, I don't want you to miss the spotlight here either. You've done an exceptional job at Home Forward, and I know you have big plans for the future, and we all look forward to continuing to work with you on those plans. So thank you. You're the right person at the right place at the right time.
I appreciate
and
that.
now
Thank
with
you,
Vivian on the team, that only strengthens it. So thank you. I vote aye. The appointment's approved. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, item 478.
Authorize a competitive solicitation and contract with the lowest responsible bidder and provide payment for construction of the Sunnyside North Reconstruction and Green Streets, project number E10367, for an estimated cost of $9.9 million.
Very good. And colleagues, obviously Commissioner Fish had to step aside, but we have Brandon Wilson, engineer, and Scott Gibson, principal engineer from the Bureau of Environmental Services, and they're here with a brief presentation about the ordinance. Thank you, folks, for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. For the record, my name is Scott Gibson, and I'm here to ask for approval for a construction contract on the Sunnyside North reconstruction project. Next slide, please, Brandon. The Sunnyside North project is a part of our Neighborhood to the River program. These program goals are to plan and implement collection system projects that provide both watershed health and sewer system improvements through innovation, collaboration, and integration of efforts. Using this project delivery method makes sense in the Sunnyside North Basin, working collaboratively to develop and implement project solutions to most efficiently deliver the greatest system, community, and watershed benefits. Project goals are best achieved through an integrated planning and implementation approach, which includes a combination of capital projects, private property retrofits, vegetated improvements, and education, community outreach, and public involvement, all delivered through an equity lens. The three pictures we show are our standard green streets. We also have some community involvements, including planting of the green streets and street trees in this program. And the lower photo shows what we call our private property retrofit, where we get volunteers from the community to retrofit their own private property to make it more sustainable with our system needs. And with that, I'll turn it over to Brandon Wilson, our project manager.
Thank you, Scott. Good morning. My name is Brandon Wilson, for the record. This project is primarily capacity driven, with goals to reduce basement sewer backup risk and reduce storm flows entering the combined sewer. This is accomplished by upsizing undersized pipes and constructing vegetated stormwater facilities, both curb extensions and planters. On the screen, you can see an overview of the project area. The geographic location is bounded roughly by 20th to the west, Cesar Chavez to the east, north is Stark, and the southern boundary is roughly Taylor. You can see the Lone Fir Cemetery is nearby, as well as Laurelhurst Park to the north. Let's see, so there's also a subset project area that we've added 6 additional stormwater facilities that will be combined as part of this project around 30th and Market. I would also like to note that there is night work for one block in this project along 25th between Belmont and Morrison, and we anticipate that taking 3 weeks. And we only have one block because of the early coordination we've done with Bureau of Transportation and to minimize night work and other impacts along Belmont. Let's see, so this project is recommended through, as part of the BES Systems Plan 2012. A little bit more detail about some of the scope: 9,700 linear feet of mainline pipe, down to 8-inch and up to 48-inch. And again, it's mostly capacity driven, but there are some poor condition pipes that we're fixing as well as 13 new sewer extension mains. And the third point is the 33 stormwater facilities as part of this project. Public involvement. Our public involvement representative is Debbie Castleton, and there have been several mailings sent throughout the project life, informing surrounding community of updated project information, several neighborhood meetings, public meetings, including those within the neighborhood association, allowing for education and interaction, and as well as continued ongoing close coordination with residents and businesses regarding specific concerns and impacts. Project schedule and budget. You can see that the ordinance is for $9.9 million. The advertisement we're anticipating next month. Level of confidence is high. Purchasing agent to report back to council after this with the lowest responsible bid. That's after the advertisement. Notice to proceed in construction, if everything goes well, is this October. And construction duration is approximately 15 months. And that concludes the presentation. Are there any questions?
Yeah, so all the curb extension work will be fully compliant, ADA, result in ADA compliant
Yes.
curbs as well?
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, that's definitely our intent.
Okay.
We're also working very closely with Bureau of Transportation to understand the interaction of our curb extensions with the ADA ramps. And we've expanded the level of involvement we do on ADA ramps to, we do a lot of repaving. And so as you repave, you have opportunities to fix or improve ramps, and we're working on some ways to work better with PBOT so that they can prioritize where those improvements get made.
That's good.
Very good. Is there any testimony on this item?
No one else signed up.
All right, this is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next item, item number 480.
Accept bid of R&R General Contractors, Inc. for the Southwest Vermont Street, Southwest 65th to Southwest Capitol Highway Pavement Rehabilitation Project for $2,434,922.
Good. We've got Larry, come on up. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. You have before you the procurement report recommending a contract award to R&R General
Sorry,
Contractors.
I need to get your name for the record.
Well, see, I thought you knew me by now.
I know you.
For the record, I am Larry Palat. Can't even say my own last name. I am
All right,
Larry
let's try
Palat.
all over. Yeah, you guys start all over now.
Okay. For the record, I am Larry Palat, Procurement Manager. You have before you a procurement report recommending a contract award to R&R General Contractors for the Southwest Vermont Street, Southwest 165th or 65th to Southwest Capitol Highway project or pavement rehab project. The engineer's estimate on this project was $2.8 million, and the Bureau's confidence level was moderate. Bids were opened on March 15th, 2018. 2 bids were received in response to the solicitation, and R&R General Contractor is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder at $2,434,922.09. Where'd they get the 9 cents, I don't know, which is actually 13% under the engineer's estimate. The Bureau of Transportation Procurement Services had identified an aspirational goal for certified disadvantaged, minority, women-owned, and emerging small business enterprises subcontractor and supplier utilization of 20% of the hard construction cost for the project. There is a total of $250,703, which is only 10.3% of the DMW ESB certified subcontractor participation on this project, apportioned as follows. Disadvantaged business enterprises, $172,620 flagging and trucking, and emerging small business, $78,083 concrete cutting and signage. However, R&R General Contractors is a state-certified minority business enterprise contractor, which makes the total DMW ESP participation for this project, including the prime contractor, 54.24%. R&R General Contractors is in compliance with all of the city's requirements for contracting. Another small note, R&R General Contractors is a member of our Prime Contractor Development Program, which has open opportunities or confined opportunities for projects under $1 million. However, this project, they were successful bidders in the open market against all other contractors, regardless of size. It's kind of a nice thing for our program people to grow out of the program. Council has any particular questions relative to the procurement aspect? I can answer those. I don't think there's anybody from transportation here.
Colleagues, Commissioner Fritz.
I actually have a very detailed questions, thanks to Janine Gates on my staff. The presentation said that the total disadvantaged business participation is 63.5, and you just said 54 point something else. So I was just wondering.
Unless I did the math wrong, I'm pretty sure it's 54.24.
Maybe you could just get back to me on that, because what's in the written document.
I'm sorry, I will certainly clarify
Yeah.
that, Commissioner. I absolutely will, but I did the math this morning and maybe I missed.
I don't know whether it needs, if it is incorrect in the documentation, if that needs to be changed as a scrivener's error or not. I'm just, I'd be interested to know.
Absolutely. I will
Either
fix
way,
it this afternoon.
it's very impressive. Thank you.
And I will fix it this afternoon and let your office know.
Thank you.
Further questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Move the report.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Saltzman, a second from Commissioner Fritz. Please call the roll.
Saltzman,
Well, this is entitled Pavement Rehabilitation Project. It's really much more than that on Southwest Vermont. This is a project that is being funded under the voter-approved Fixing Our Streets program. And not only will it be rehabilitating the pavement, they will be adding sidewalks along sections of Vermont. They will be adding, widening the curb lanes on the other side of Vermont, adding bike lanes, and fixing curb ramps as well. So it's a great project. Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Thank you, Commissioner Saltzman, for highlighting that this is so much more than a paving project. In fact, it's really exciting because it goes by the Southwest Community Centre, which has long lacked adequate access, sidewalks, etc. So this is a project that the Southwest Neighbourhoods, Inc. Transportation Committee has been dogging for a long time. I also have to credit Mayor Sam Adams, who put money into the sidewalks that have already been done. So little by little, we're patching together some very challenging streets in Southwest Portland where stormwater impacts have to be considered and often greatly increase the cost. So I'm happy to hear that this one came in at 13% less than estimated. Thanks to everybody for your good work. Aye.
Wheeler.
Larry, this is fantastic. Thank you.
I take full credit, absolutely.
As well you should. As well you should. Commissioner Saltzman, thank you. Commissioner Fritz, thank you. This is really great work. And while there will undoubtedly be some inconvenience while the work is going on, at the end of the day, I think it will be a very, very positive, transformational, and well-received set of improvements in the community. So thank you for your thoughtful, holistic approach to this. I think it's great. Thank you. I vote aye. The report's accepted.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Last but not least, item 481.
Authorize a competitive solicitation and contract with the lowest responsible bidder and provide for payment for the 1900 building toilets project for an estimated $1,325,792.
Very good. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Randy Selleck. I am a Facilities Construction Project Manager with OMF. You have before you another ADA compliance project today. This project is a request for competitive solicitation for our construction bid process for the 1900 building toilets project. The basis of this project is indeed an ADA improvement project to meet current code. In addition, the project includes plumbing and lighting energy efficient upgrades. We've also added, as you'll recall from our previous meetings, gender neutral restrooms to the building. Each floor will have a gender neutral restroom. We currently only have one restroom that's being used as a gender neutral restroom now. That's on the second floor. That will change and for ADA improvements, but it will remain a gender neutral restroom. We will add to the other floor, so each floor will have a gender neutral restroom. We are also including finish upgrades per BDS's request, and BDS is funding the finish upgrades on the project. We will be doing an adult for janitor closets with mop sinks. I discovered, as I previously mentioned in an earlier meeting, that we do not have any janitor closets with mop sinks. I am reusing the current closets, which are really just storage closets for the gender neutral toilet rooms. So we're going to do an adult to see what the pricing comes in for those to add 3 to the building. The engineer's estimate for the project is $1,325,792. I think that's really it. It's a pretty basic maintenance project, but it's going to be great to get the ADA improvements as well as energy efficient and gender neutral into the project. Any questions?
Very good. Colleagues, questions for Ann? Very good. Is there any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Thank you for your work on this. It's great to have it happening. Aye.
Fritz.
Basic services and done in a really splendid fashion. Thank you very much for all your work. Aye.
Wheeler.
Well, first of all, thank you for your great work. Second of all, thank you for your patience. You've been sitting here a long time.
Again.
Yes, yes. And I don't know how that keeps happening to you, Rand. But
thank you for noticing.
Thank you for. I just assume you're learning a lot, and pretty soon you will be the most educated employee of the great city of Portland, Oregon, sitting through all of this testimony. But thank you. This is really important work, and it's solid work, and we have you to thank for it. So thank you. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted.
Great, thank you all.
Thank you. And we're adjourned.